this 5-day academic writing workshop. I would like to let everyone know that our sessions are going to be recorded, right? So all the information that we're going to be doing each day will be recorded for you to access later if need be. Hopefully you can attend all 5 days, but in the event that you can't, everything will be recorded and online. Now, we're going to be working mainly from this wiki. All the things that we're going to be discussing, I've uploaded, tried to organize in wiki as an additional source. So again, whether we're in the session live as we are now or outside the session, hopefully this will provide some context and it will provide a way for you to access things that we talk about face-to-face. So the 5-day workshop here, and this is just the main page. The very first day here, we're going to click here. I'm not going to go through all the information here because there's a lot of information that will be more relevant to some of you, less relevant for others. For example, at the bottom of this main page, I included some links to some journals. The main task that we're going to be working towards these entire 5 days is really the development of an essay and some concepts related to developing a written essay. And some of you come from a more research standpoint than others, and although we'll be talking some about APA, it's not necessarily going to be a requirement for you to actually do research or look up journals. Certainly if you want to do that, I've tried to include some resources here that will be helpful. But I don't want to scare anybody off the first day looking at all of these journals and doing research and all of this. It's going to be, again, applicable to some of you more than others. Okay, so the second thing I want to draw to your attention to, and if you're connected right now, you might want to open up, obviously, the main page here, and then if you scroll down to where it says Welcome to Academic Writing Workshop, and you click on Outliner, this will bring up this page, which is basically Digo, and it has different links, and I've organized it in an outline that will, I think, help organize some of the ideas. So we're going to be working kind of in two places, in the wiki and in this outliner. And I specifically would like for you to look at the tasks because this is going to be an easy reference to see each day the tasks that we're going to be doing. So outliner and wiki, these are our two places that we'll be working. And again, you can access outliner from the main page right here where it says outliner under Welcome Academic Writing Workshop. All right, so I'd like to go ahead and just jump in here on the first day here, and you can either follow along or just look at the screen that we're looking at here. What I'd like to discuss getting started here is I was thinking for the overall goal of this 5-day workshop, I kind of look at it in 3 different areas, okay? The first area is I want each of us to kind of reflect on some issue that you face as a teacher in any class. It doesn't have to be just academic writing or related to writing per se. It can be any class. It can be in the practical class. Basically any type of class that you have experience with. But these 5 days, I'd like for us to reflect on this one issue that you face or a problem or that you would just like to discuss and learn more about. And because the purpose of writing, when we look at what we're going to write about, we need to have something that we want to write about, right? So since we're all EFL educators, I think we can all kind of relate to a certain issue or some issues that we face in our practice that we find interesting and might want to write about. So the kind of overall question here throughout these 5 days is this one question: what issue? And I have it in the plural, but what issue do you face? You know, what is it? Could be assessment. It could be material design. It could be the use of technology. It could be how you get your students to interact more in class. Okay. But this is something that we'll be looking at and talking about within these 5 days. The second thing that we'll be talking about is pedagogy, teaching of not only academic writing, but also your own courses. My feeling, my job here in this 5-day workshop is to try to help you make connections between academic writing and the pedagogy and any other pedagogy that also reflects or that is relevant in your other classes. So these are some things that we'll be talking about as well. The third thing, obviously, is pertaining to the writing mechanics. So that is the nuts and bolts of writing, the punctuation, the abbreviations, APA formatting, and so on. So this is another area of focus that we're going to be discussing over the next 5 days. Some of you are going to gravitate, I would assume, to one of these three. Maybe some of you are more interested in the mechanics of writing. Maybe some of you are more interested in the pedagogy, or just simply this one central question here, focusing more on how you want to improve. But what I'd like to ask from you now, and if you're connected to the internet, you can do this several ways. I'd like to ask, what expectation do you have for this 5-day workshop that could be included in this table here, or it might not be. Maybe there's something that I didn't mention here, but I want getting started to get some input from you, and you can either email me, I think all of you have my email, or you can just write it on this piece of paper and leave it with me at the end of today's session. But this will help me as we go through these next 5 days to make sure that you get the most out of this 5-day workshop. So again, it's a personal expectation or goal that you want out of this these 5 days. And it could be something about, pedagogy, assessment, basically anything that you find relevant to that we have here. So I'm just going to give you all just a few minutes here to kind of think about that and write those out or type it out. And again, you can either email me or you can leave it with me at the end of the session. So just give everybody just a couple of minutes to think about that. It could be something more specific that I've mentioned here, or it could be something more general, depending. If it's something about APA that I don't have here, it could be more specific and let me know. These are some things that I want to get out of this 5-day workshop. Morning. Morning. And if your expectations change throughout the 5 days, feel free to, tomorrow you say, oh, I forgot about this, and maybe this is another expectation I have, feel free to forward that to me. It's important that you share your expectations with me now and throughout. So again, we can try to adapt this workshop as needed. I have a lot of information here, but I do want to try to adapt this to you. So your thoughts are very important, your expectations, being as specific as possible helps me kind of plan. All right. Now, getting started, I want us to kind of go back to this one question that I brought up earlier. As an EFL educator, what issue do you typically face? Because we have to have something to write about, right? I mean, this is the goal. We don't want you writing about any old thing, right? It has to be something relevant, something meaningful for us. And if we look at this, or consider this one question, I want to bring up an example statement here. And that's related to our first activity. This, can someone read this sentence? And you don't have to read in parentheses for this topic. Someone read the statement.
I'm studying teacher feedback because I want to find out when giving feedback allows students to feel more confident when speaking and to good ideas. The parenthesis is not right.
No.
In order to answer the bigger question of how teacher intervention can either provide or discourage students or production in class.
Okay, thank you. So, looking at this single statement, what do you think the issue, a possible issue, could be that's relevant to the statement, or a problem that might be relevant in the classroom that would lead to the statement? Any thoughts, ideas?
I want to understand your question.
Okay, so this statement, I am studying teacher feedback because I want to find out when giving feedback allows students to feel more confident when speaking L2 with their peers in order to answer the big question, how can teacher intervention promote or discourage students' oral production? So the question is, is there a problem embedded in that statement someplace? Is there a problem that is under the surface that would generate this statement? What do you think? Is there some issue in the classroom, whether it be pedagogical or based on learning, that comes to mind when you hear that statement?
For example, the teacher intervention, not how the teacher acts in that moment. Is he always correcting, or is he giving, I don't know, clues to promote students' correct production? Because I believe that if you are correcting all the time, they wouldn't want to participate anymore. So probably intervention can be based on motivation, on teaching strategies. Yes.
So maybe the problem is the teacher overcorrects in class, perhaps, right? Could that be a possibility? Or maybe the way the teacher gives feedback is demotivating the students, or maybe as a result they don't speak or whatever. So you see kind of the problem that's kind of related to this statement, right? Because there's no mention of the problem is this, right? But the problem is in there, a potential problem is there. And there could be others. There could be others. Any other thoughts about another possible problem that's linked to this statement?
Well, it could be clarity, because we don't know if they're talking about just teacher interventions when they're correcting students, or as students trying to be teachers, if they're talking about feedback sessions about teaching or their teaching.
Right.
And it's not clear. I don't know, maybe something about clarity. It's not clear during what situations.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at the problem of the statement not being clear enough, right? What I want us to do, our first activity is I'd like for you to look at or think about the problem that you're considering right now. hopefully. Does everybody have kind of an issue that you're thinking about right now? So think of a potential problem or a problem that you're thinking about right now. And I'd like for us to generate our own sentence. Now this sentence comes in 3 parts. This is a model, and I'd like all of us to kind of follow this model. The first section is, I am studying, or you can say, I am writing about, or I am interested in. Those are some other variations. We want to establish the topic. So the very first section of this statement is, I am studying, or I am interested in teacher feedback. Just up to there. Okay, that's our topic. Because, now the second section of this statement is going to be something related to possible research questions or hypothesis. I want to find out when giving feedback allows students to feel more confident. The key words here are, I want to find out when something happens. You might say, I want to find out how something happens. I want to find out why something happens, or with whom this happens to. So it all depends on what you're thinking about. It depends on your topic and what you want to get out, but it doesn't always have to be about the when. When giving feedback allows students to feel more confident when speaking out to in their peers. Okay, so the second section up to here is, think of it in terms of a how or a why or a when or with whom about your topic. Again, thinking about this problem that you're facing, that you want to explore. The third section, we're looking now at the significance. This is the so what, and this is in order to. So we can, this key phrase is in order to. So all of us will have in order to, ... in order to, and then you fill out the rest of this statement. In my case, this case, the bigger question is how teacher intervention can promote or discourage students' oral production. That's the basis there. So think of this statement in 3 sections: the topic, the research questions or central hypothesis, which is in terms of the how or the when, the why or where, with whom, and then the significance. Okay, and it's all, everybody's gonna, we can all start here with the first person. I am interested in. And maybe interested in is probably a better way to start. Maybe not studying is not the best example. I am interested in this because I want to know how this happens or why this happens in order to, however you want to finish. Questions about the statements? So what I'd like to do is give you a few minutes to kind of put your thoughts together into coming up with this. And then I'd like for us to kind of stand up, because it's kind of cold anyway. Stand up and kind of walk around and share this statement with some of your colleagues. Share this statement with colleagues and ask just ask for feedback about, well, what, like in this case, I would ask, well, what do you think? Do you have a problem? How do you feel about the way that you give feedback? What's your approach to giving feedback? How do you know if your students are motivated or discouraged? How can you tell when they're discouraged? Right? And have a discussion, a brief discussion around this topic to get some ideas. What's your philosophy about giving feedback? Is it a problem that you face? Okay, so we'll start first just to give you a few minutes to kind of, you don't have to necessarily write it right now. I mean, you can just think about it and say, okay, I'm going to say this. I am interested in this because of this in order to do this. The key phrases: I'm interested in, because this, in order to. Any questions? If you have any questions, please let me know. underline the key phrases. Again, this statement should be based on a problem. So think of a problem that you face in your teaching. It could be related to assessment, it could be related to giving instructions, could be L1, L2, could be related to teacher talk time, could be related to some sort of material design or implementation, or even assessment. How do you know if materials work in your class? Might be related to educational technology, interaction. And then based on that problem, and try to focus on, one, right? Try to focus on one that you feel you want to explore these next 5 days. Okay, so this is kind of setting the stage here for coming up with an issue that you want to discuss and think about during this workshop. And this is our first activity that relates to this issue that we want to think about. So don't think of one that's not all that important, right? Think of one that's fairly high up on the priority list. Does everybody have your statements? No. No? Okay. No. Or your issue? Can you mind reading? Hello?
I'm interested in constructivism because I want to know how social and individual constructivism can be applied in ESL classroom activities in order to promote and design constructional activities.
Okay. Can you read the last part again? In order to
promote and design constructional activities.
Okay. Constructional activities. Within those constructional activities, what's the problem that you face that's related to those types?
How to design them.
All right. So let's say that you say, okay, I want to implement these constructional activities. Why? Why do you want to do that?
Because I believe in constructivism.
Okay. But thinking like of a practical, think of like a scenario in your class where you say, you know what, I should have implemented a constructivism activity or something based on a certain type of activity. Can you think of a situation or an experience that you said, oh, I need to have this type of activity?
For example, talking about social constructivism, you have an expert and you have an apprentice. Yes? So probably mixing a student who knows a lot with another one who doesn't know it.
All right.
And the expert can help the other. Yes?
All right.
Probably in a written activity, in an oral activity,
okay.
They can help each other.
And why? Why is that important?
To make the other student, the apprentice student, feel more comfortable.
Okay.
Because the teacher is not always telling him or her what to do.
Okay, so maybe sometimes the students feel uncomfortable with the teachers always telling them what to do, maybe?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Because there are teachers who are always.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, taking that same idea, because the idea is good, think of it like this. I'm interested in finding something about student interaction. I'm interested in student interaction because the way what you're telling me is you're interested in this dynamic of student interaction. Let's get the teacher out of the equation, more about the students, right? I'm interested in student interaction, very general, because I want to find out how more advanced students can help lower students or lower level students, in order to allow students to feel less uncomfortable receiving feedback from a teacher, or something like that.
So it would be more specific.
A little bit more specific.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Does that make sense? As an example, right? Of course you don't have to, right? But that's an example. Anybody else have? I would prefer we can share this as a group, but I'd also like for you to share amongst yourselves as well. If someone is, anyone else want to share them?
I'm interested in teacher recognition of strengths and weaknesses because I want to find out if so-called experienced teachers recognize their own strengths and weaknesses in order to continually develop.
Good. Okay, so the topic is what? What's your topic?
Teacher strengths and weaknesses.
Teacher recognition of, or some sort of awareness, self-awareness of strengths and weaknesses. Because, and then what is your hypothesis?
I want to find out if so-called experienced teachers recognize their own strengths and weaknesses.
All right. So maybe did you have a WH question in there somewhere, or how? Okay. You could be something like, I want to find out how teachers determine or how they recognize their own strengths and weaknesses. Right? And you could even tie it into some sort of linguistic thing to make it even more specific if you're interested in reading or writing or whatever, or even vocabulary, or right? And getting it specific sometimes is the challenge, right? And when you're looking at something like this type of exercise, you're like, how can I be more specific? The easiest way for us as language teachers is think of one of the 4 skills or an integration of those skills: grammar, vocabulary, even discourse, or nonverbal communication, everything else that we typically think of as language teachers. Throw that information in there, and that automatically will make it more specific. In order to, right? And the bigger question, what was your in order to?
In order to continually develop.
Okay, so in order to continually develop, in order to become a more reflective practitioner, in order to help our own to continue learning as teachers. Good. Anybody else?
Can I read my
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, first, sorry for the delay, but we were downstairs applying.
Oh, that's okay. That's
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm lost.
Okay.
I'm interested in making the students use functions instead of grammatical rules, because I want to find out how to help them in this process in order to have a successful course. Thinking about level 5, because my experience with level 5 is that there are a lot of functions, but they are used to working with grammar. So, teacher, but what about the grammar? Or where is the structure? What's the rule? They don't want to use it like function. They want to have grammar.
So the problem is that they don't know when to use it?
Yeah,
They understand the grammar
know
rule?
how to use it.
I'm sorry?
They don't know how to use it.
Okay.
They are used to having like a rule and making a lot of exercises because of the last course or the last book they were using. With the new one, it's full of functions, not grammatical rules.
Functions like going to the doctor, that type of thing? Functions? Or how do you, when you, like what, an example of
We
function?
are like, I don't remember, if you give me a minute, I can check it in my PowerPoint.
Just to understand what you mean by function, like asking for directions, or?
No, they are really weird functions like, it says grammar, for example. And then you can use adjective, I don't know, adjective clauses. That is the grammar.
Okay.
But it is not real grammar. It's like functions. So they get confused and they are like, teacher, but if I want to say blah blah. Do I have to follow this phrase all the time? It's like, no, you can use this or this. And they're like, so what do I have to write down? What's the grammar? And it's like, it's not grammar. Even if it says grammar, it's not grammar. It's more functions.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's weird in the book, believe me.
But I guess I do.
For them because they were used to working with New Inside Out. So when, well, the book that I have, and they were like, this is a new book, this is so difficult. And it doesn't say grammar, and then the practice, and then it's like more functional. And it was really difficult for them. And thinking that I am having level 5 again, as opposed to, I don't want to play the same program.
All right, if you compare your example with Jana's example, with Jana's example, we went more specific. Maybe in your case, we can think a little bit, not too much, but a little bit more general. For example, things like the use of the language versus,
But this is not,
well,
believe me that the book is so weird.
right, but let's say the book is weird.
But we have to cover that because everything is done with the book.
Okay.
And the students are like, they want to have step 1, exercise 1, step 1A, 1B. And if you skip 1, it is no teacher. Why did you skip this exercise?
Okay.
Do you want
Yes, I know. I think I know what you mean. I still think we're kind of related. Part of it's overt covert, or another way of looking at it is covering the content versus uncovering the content. Like, how can you present the content so they uncover this information? That is, it's still, you're still.
But the problem is the kind of students we have in this kind of courses.
All right. But
Because
so.
grammar context, like in proper, there is no problem with that.
Okay.
The problem is.
Is there, right, so is there a way to teach grammar and context even though this is a different context? I mean, this is a different group of students, a different.
Yeah. This is.
Is it possible?
extensión.
No, but my question is it possible for you to teach grammar and context in this class?
No,
Why? Or why not?
because of the book. Because we have text.
So the problem is the book is the syllabus.
Yeah.
I'm interested in
Having a
learning more about,
or having different kinds of students.
because I look at this,
The problem is the book.
is the problem in the book? I mean,
For them,
here's,
for students,
okay.
that we're using the other one. For example, I have level 2.
Yeah.
In level 2, I didn't have any problem because they started with the new book in level 1. So they didn't have another one to be compared, right? The problem is that when the students were using the last book and then they changed language, that is why they find it so difficult. And it is also difficult for the teacher because they were used to be working with different kind of exercises and another kind of structuring.
Janet, did you have something you wanted?
I believe it's student-centered, no? Or motivation.
No, because they are really good students, they are motivated. Do you remember the case of Doctora Mike? She's a really good student. She can spend 100 hours in the academy working because she really wants. But she was using another book. And when it was changed, for them, it was really difficult because they were used to working with another structure.
Yes, the problem is to change expectations.
So I'm interested in changing student expectations about learning.
Exactly.
I'm interested
Changing.
I'm interested in knowing more about students' expectations about learning, something like that. Because that's the problem, right? They're expecting, they're used to working one way, now you're asking, okay? Because, okay, so because I want to find out, what do you want to find out? I want to find out,
How to help them?
okay, but propose something, like, I want to find out how teaching overtly or covertly, or I want to find out how I can teach not using, going
Okay,
from
how
exercise.
How I can help them?
But remember, this is your hypothesis, so it needs to be
Yes.
specific. If we want to talk about constructivism, if we want to talk about social cultural theory, if we want to talk about material
But
design.
it also can be a research question.
Well, yeah, I put research question here. It's not a question, of course, it's a statement, but the questions come directly from those. So for example, here the question would be, when do teachers give feedback, right? But in Lolis's case, right, she can think of it like, I want to find out, now you need to think of some sort of possible solution. What do you want to investigate or pursue? Like, it can be something.
What I want to know is how to help them.
Okay, but think how.
But give an option.
Yeah.
Yes, but give an option. You start with an option. Yes, for example, supplementary material. Give an option.
I did.
No, but right now here. No, but
No,
right
here,
now
in the statement. Because when you say, I want to know how this happens, you're not proposing it. There's no hypothesis there. You just, it's, so try to think of something. I want to find out how I can teach covertly so that in order for students to realize when they learn, or to change, to realize that what this activity that was not from the book links to the book in this way, or makes connections to the book, or whatever. But this is the key part here. How or when can I use supplementary materials? Or how can I, when can I use Facebook or whatever it is that you
give an option
propose?
and work on that option. And there is the answer to it.
Yeah, because the idea here, the next step, obviously, is to look and think or research about, more specifically, this second piece. This is really the focus here. This is where you're going to be proposing. And Lolis is going to be making some proposals, right? Looking at how possible, some possible solutions to that particular issue.
So do I have to write a possible solution?
Okay.
And how to help them?
Well, yeah, but keep it within the context of this statement, right? And you can think of a how or the why or when or where. Think of the question words to guide you that lead into these phrases that are proposals, that are suggestions.
So how to help them in this process is not our solution.
No. You can propose, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter if we all agree with you or not. It's irrelevant. You propose something, think about it, think of your experiences, think, okay, maybe it's a different,
Okay, so I think that you have answered my question. Anyway, I'm interested in teacher feedback on students'
rationales, okay?
Because I want to find out how teacher feedback can encourage students to support their decisions on theory.
Okay.
In order to address a bigger issue on how teacher feedback can help the students make more informed decisions.
All right.
That's part in order to.
Okay, so this topic again, I'm interested in.
Teacher feedback on student-teacher reflections.
Okay, because
I want to find out how teacher feedback can encourage students to support their decisions on theory.
when you say students, you mean student training, teachers. Okay, student teachers. So you want to find out their perspective on their rationale or their theory, almost.
Yes, to use theory theory to support their decision.
Okay. In order to?
To answer a bigger issue on how teacher feedback can help the students make more informed decisions.
Or how student feedback can help student trainers connect theory to practice.
Yes.
I mean, it can be just a simple.
Yes, how teacher feedback.
Or how theory informs practice, or you can word it however you like. It's something just, again, reconnecting theory and practice.
Yes. How teacher feedback can help the students to connect theory.
Or find relationships between theory and practice. Something like that. Anybody?
Yeah, I guess I have something. I'm interested in student teacher identity transformation because I want to find out how students transform their vision of themselves in terms of professional and personal traits. So in the process of studying a BA program, in order to intervene in the preparation of the teachers.
Okay, the second piece, let's focus the second piece. All right, so I want to find out
how student teachers transform their, I don't know if the word is vision, but how they transform their identity.
the thing is, I think here, and this is the hard part here, is general, right? It's just the general topic, and here we get it. The hard part is the second piece, making sure that it's specific enough and to work with, to get to the nitty gritty, right? To get to this. So let's look at this again. In order to find out
how student teachers transform their vision, their identity.
all right, because we mentioned identity here, so my question is there something we can mention here that is a subset of identity? Because identity can mean a lot of different things. Is it, what type of it, what do you mean by identity and teacher?
As a teacher and as a person.
Choose just one.
Yeah, yeah.
First.
Yeah, and choose one and then be more specific. Find a more specific aspect. Choose one aspect about identity.
The professional.
No.
The professional.
Teacher? As a teacher?
Is a teacher? What?
Teacher.
In order to find out
How students teachers transform, or how student teachers.
because even transform gets a little vague.
How students teachers.
Or how they change perspective, if that's what you're interested in.
Because it is like a process. Transform is the last part. So here would be a process.
How they change. But what do you mean by identity?
Change their vision.
Everything but you are. Because just
Just choose, let's narrow, yeah.
That's probably I have with this identity means
Everything.
Right, and you're probably gonna have to just make a decision and choose one aspect of it, because you're not gonna be able to talk about every aspect of teacher identity.
Because in identity you get the knowledge, beliefs,
Yeah.
personal traits and feelings, emotions.
I mean, it could be something like, how do the personal beliefs link to your practice, or something like that, or you know, I'm assuming you, or maybe I'm wrong, are you interested in the teacher identity within the classroom, or is this just a teacher identity separate? Okay, okay, so maybe it's something about either beliefs or ideas or previous experiences and how those relate to something in the classroom. Now, it's something in the classroom probably needs to be also specified more
Yeah, because what happens, they bring these beliefs, ideas, these previous experiences to the classroom, and they get into the classroom and they get new ideas, new beliefs, new things, and that makes them transform their identity.
All right, so maybe you're
I want to find out how students, teachers teaching practices change their visions of themselves as a teachers? How being in front of a group, how their teaching practice, yes, change or modify their vision as a teacher.
Now,
I think so.
yeah.
That it would be just part of it. And a different one, it would be like awareness of their beliefs, change their vision as a teacher, awareness of their knowledge, because it is everything.
One of the things that Tony mentioned I think is interesting, that's key, that he might want to specifically state here, is the difference between ideas and beliefs that come prior or outside of the classroom experience versus those that emerge within the classroom. And so if you could specify that, that would make it very, and along with everything else that we're talking about, that difference between prior, because you can envision talking to the teacher, okay, you're teaching this in class, where do these beliefs come from? Oh, well, I learned it a long time ago, or they may say, oh, it just came out in class. So maybe it's that, could be that difference between those beliefs or opinions that come outside of the classroom.
Because, for example, as a student, they have a vision of a teacher. After experiencing being a teacher, they are going to modify.
Right. Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir.
General.
Okay.
I'm hoping we can help me.
Okay.
I'm interested in scaffolding because I want to promote the help of more proficient students and older ones in order to help them improve their current skills.
Okay. So I'm interested in scaffolding. Scaffolding. I'm interested in scaffolding because I want to find out. Now, think of one of the question words, because I want to find out. You choose a word. It could be what, how, where, why, with whom. And then go more specific. Think of that problem that you're reflecting on. I'm assuming there's a problem that you feel that scaffolding will help address this problem. So articulate that problem at this, that would be kind of the answer to that.
Can it be because I want to find out how more proficient students can help weaker students with some skills?
Yeah, so now you're saying scaffolding, but between students, not between the teacher.
I mean, with
Yes.
students.
All right, so maybe you, and this is optional, right? You could say, I'm interested in scaffolding, or I'm interested in student scaffolding, or something. You can mention scaffolding with students, because I want to find out how more advanced students help you, lower level students. In order to, now to be more specific, we have different options. If you want, you can focus on some sort of linguistic area, right? Maybe one of the 4 skills, or integrating the skills, or grammar,
That's what I
vocabulary.
was thinking. Should I just focus on only one skill, or because I was thinking more like in general terms. I'm thinking about my NSA students. You know, we make them practice their 4 main skills. So I was thinking about the 4 main skills. But if it's like too general, maybe I can just.
Well, go back to the problem. What's the problem? Is the problem related to integration of skills? Is the problem working in one particular skill? Is the problem, and usually we can, that's why the problem, that first question, what issue you face as an EFL teacher? It all goes back to that one problem, and a lot of times that'll help narrow it down. If the problem is related to integration of skills, then we can say that here.
So I can say integrated skills instead of skills.
You could, yeah. And, thinking in terms of things to write about, of course, there's plenty there. There's a good, there's a lot of information you can talk about how to go about integrating skills. Right? The second piece is the most important. You have to think of, what can I talk about the second section, right? If you ask yourself, no, if you say, well, there's really nothing I can talk about, then that should guide you to say, well, maybe this is not the best thing to mention in the second section. Yes.
I think that that you or we need to be so specific because you are thinking about this as a first step for research.
It's the first step of research for those who aren't planning on going to the library and reading. It needs to be specific enough that you can come up with certain points, certain ideas, like paragraphs, right?
Because
to support this second piece, the second
Because
section.
if we are too general, we are going to get lost.
Right.
And to solve a problem, we need to start with something very specific.
Right.
That is why this first statement should be so focused.
Exactly. And that's the hard part. Right?
And
This is the hard part. This is why we discuss it and go and brainstorm, think about how we can go about making it more specific. Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly.
That is why this is
Yeah.
But yes.
Anybody else would like to share or have questions? Or yes. Okay. Oh, okay.
Ladies first.
I'm missing that one. I'm missing that one. I think that word to complete this. Well, try.
Sure.
Okay. Since I am interested in students' attitude towards assessment because I want to find out strategies that help them reflect and take action on this hour in order to be more committed in their learning process or in the development, doing their development.
Okay. I really like the third part. I really like the first part. And the second part I like, but can you read the second? I want to find out.
Strategies that help them
Right.
reflect and take action.
Can you come up with, maybe you don't mention exactly the strategy, but the type of strategy? Like some sort of type of strategy that you feel would work.
Similar to the
Like metacognitive, cognitive, affective strategies or something else. Like behavior strategies, teaching strategies. But put like some sort of an adjective to associate what type of strategies you want to research or discuss, and then think later, okay, I'm going to talk about these 2 or 3 strategies that link back to, this statement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So maybe think about that, and then we can come back if you're still missing a word. But before we get to missing a word, maybe think about the type of strategies, and then see how the sentence, because I like the first and third part. Remember, the second section is the thesis. This is your proposal. Like, this is something that you are going to include specific enough that really addresses the topic.
I'm interested in knowing about positive and effective teacher feedback because I want to find out when and how to transmit self-confidence in students in order for them to develop fluency so they improve their own production inside and outside the classroom.
Okay, the second, I want to find out how and when
to transmit and promote self-confidence
transmit and
derived from the positive feedback.
transmit and promote.
When and how to transmit when and how to transmit and promote at the same time self-confidence in students. Because in my feedback can be effective even though it's negative. I want to focus on positive feedback so I can build promote self-confidence in students for speaking.
Because I want to find out how positive, because I want to find out how positive and negative
And how
feedback.
to transmit and promote self-confidence in students through the feedback.
Okay, I'm thinking kind of rewording, saying pretty much the same thing, but I want to find out how and when to transmit and promote.
Okay, the first one, I'm interested in knowing, or maybe knowing more about positive and effective teacher feedback.
All right, let's maybe be more general there.
Negative and positive.
Okay, I'm interested in teacher feedback because if we say it more general, I'm interested
What
in.
I want to highlight positive.
Can we highlight it in the second section? I want to find out how to, and the idea is make it more general in the beginning, the topic section. I'm interested in teacher feedback, and because I want to find out how positive feedback, or I want to find out when positive feedback, or how, and then,
My idea is through positive feedback, you're going to build confidence and self-confidence in
I
students.
want to find out how positive feedback promotes confidence in
Because if it is
students.
negative, they will become shy. You know, I want to talk because they don't say that, but you're too demanding, you're always questioning me, so I better.
Okay, so I want to find out how positive feedback can help motivate students. And if you want to be more specific in a certain linguistic area or whatever. What I said, no? I want to find out how positive feedback.
Motivating, but also to build self-confidence.
Well, okay, motivation, self-confidence, you know, whatever words you want to use.
Maybe they could be very motivated.
Let's see, yeah, and it's very, yeah.
So you can
I would,
build influence
I mean, yeah.
inside and outside.
Choose one.
I would choose one. I would say within.
What do you want?
I mean, I would keep it just within the classroom context, because when you start talking about things outside the classroom, how many confounding variables that are without, you know, not beyond our control, you know, it gets really, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, anybody else?
Chaos, we haven't heard.
It says, I'm interested in the use and design of ESP materials because I want to find out how beneficial it is for people who work in different areas, the use of it, in order to make them become aware of the usefulness it has in order to develop a foreign language.
Can you read the second section again? A little bit slower?
Yeah, because I want to find out how beneficial it is for people who work in different areas. the
Oh,
use
I'm
of-
sorry, how efficient?
How beneficial.
How beneficial.
How beneficial it is for, beneficial, yeah, how beneficial it is for people who work in different areas within a company, the use of the ESP material in order to learn the language.
Is there a way to get to what you're getting at in the second section without using the word beneficial?
Okay.
I know what you mean, and maybe that would be part of the research if you're thinking about research, but think of it more concretely, like, what do you mean by beneficial, right? What, yeah.
Yes, specific.
Try to be a little more specific. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm going to continue on with the next step. We can continue bringing up these questions if you have questions about this particular statement, because it is, I mean, it's one sentence, right? But it's a hard sentence. We have to put a lot of thought into developing this one sentence. But if you get the sentence right, then the rest of the steps fall into place. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the next step. Remember that this statement comes from a problem that you're facing, and we want to kind of keep a central theme. Each one of you maintain this idea over the next 5 days as we begin talking more specifically about writing itself. Right? So now that we have our, I typically call this the problem statement, the statement that we just worked on. The next step here is developing 4 sentences. Now, I don't really have a slide on this. If you're online and you're in wiki, I would ask that you share your problem statement, the statement we're just working on. If you could add this as a comment under goals. So let me go back to the main page. Wiki. Go to day 1. Goal setting activity. The main page, day 1, goal setting activity. Down at the bottom, all of you should be able to add a comment. This is if you've added, or if you're part of the wiki, if you've added yourself to the wiki. If you haven't, you can go to the wiki and add yourself to the wiki. I think the email, I asked people to send me emails, but you don't have to send me emails, you can just add yourself to the wiki if you want. So if you do that now, let me know and I'll give you rights to edit this wiki. But if you could, I would like that you upload this statement in this space. Yeah, as a comment. Don't worry about if it changes later. Tomorrow you may have a different one. That's fine. This is just your thoughts today regarding this statement. And get it as whatever you have. It's fine. Okay. Any questions how to get to this page? Wiki, one more time. Wiki. Day 1. Goal setting activity. Down at the bottom. And if all of you should have received an email, if you need the link to this wiki, I think there's a link there that you can access to take you directly to this wiki. Okay. Now, the next step, the next stage here that I want us to kind of focus on, and this will be kind of what we'll work on today and tomorrow, essentially, is getting this statement right and looking at 4 key sentences. Now, if I ask you, what would be the 4 key sentences of any essay? Let's assume a 5-paragraph essay, just for the sake of argument. What would be the 4 key sentences? What would be the 4 most important sentences of an academic essay? The thesis statement. And what would be the other 3 statements? We are talking about that, yeah. Thesis statement would be 1. So, yes, they are supporting thesis statement. What's another way of saying those supporting sentences? What would be the supporting sentences of the thesis statement? What would be the support? Evidence, perhaps. Thinking of like where in the essay would you see it? Where does the thesis statement typically occur? In the introduction paragraph? Typically at the end? Okay. So think of like after the introduction paragraph, where would those key supporting sentences, the topic sentences, sentences. We can also call these main ideas of paragraph. Okay. So we have a thesis statement. We have topic sentences of the main paragraph. Those are the supporting sentences. In this case, we'll think in terms of 3s if we're looking at a 5-paragraph essay. Now, think about, go back now to your statement here, and look specifically at the second section here. When you focus on this section, we need to come up with a main idea, a thesis statement that directly comes from this section of your problem statement. Okay. It's the answer. It's now more specifically the answer to what you're mentioning here. For example, if I'm saying I want to find out when feedback allows students to feel more confident when speaking L2 with their peers, then I'm going to say something about student feedback. I'm going to say student feedback should be given in a timely fashion, or student feedback should be given on an ongoing basis through face-to-face and online interactions. as an example. It's my one statement that outlines the general idea specifically about this part of your problem statement. Of course, it's more specific than your topic that you mentioned here. And this third section is just the importance. It's the EK, right? It's just why is this even important? So this may or may not be part of the thesis statement, but certainly it's going to come directly from the second section. This is really the heart and soul of your thesis statement. But you need to propose something. In Loli's example, she's going to have to come up with some sort of possible solution. Maybe it's teaching covertly, maybe it's using different materials, supplementary materials, maybe it's some sort of online solution using technologies, maybe it's using mobile devices, right? So the key here is to try to come up with a thesis statement, and I would suggest, there's really no wrong way to do this, but maybe start first with the thesis statement, right? Thesis statement was like one idea, and then work on your topic sentences that would align directly to those thesis statements. Does that make sense?
You want us to write a thesis statement and then supporting sentences?
Thesis statement and supporting sentences in the form of a topic. Consider it a topic sentence. Consider it like the first sentence of each of your body paragraphs. So the order in which you present those topic sentences also matters, right? So you know, you can do it in outline form or however you want to do it. But I want to say one more thing before I leave you with this activity. Thesis statements and topic sentences. Some of the students that I have been in contact with have a hard time getting these four sentences right. When I mean right, aligned in a coherent way. And part of the problem is really understanding what claims are. What claims are, right? And when you think of a claim, how would you define it? What is a claim? If you claim something, how would you define it? What is a claim?
Something you consider to be true. Something you consider to be
okay, something that is true. Okay, what else? Anybody else? What comes to mind when you think of?
Probably your point of view, your idea,
something
what
that
you
is continuous, that is recurring.
Okay, so Jenny, you said?
something that you bring in, your idea, your opinion.
Opinion? Okay, we'll just brainstorm. Okay, what else, Colin?
Something that is continuous or recurring, that keeps coming up.
Okay. Okay. Or ongoing on the same.
Ongoing.
Okay. Anybody else? No wrong answers here. Just whatever comes to mind when you think of things. We mentioned an opinion or a belief. It's ongoing. It's true. Anybody else? All right. Here's some things that I'm going to list as what I think a claim is now. Not what I think, but what others have said that a claim is as well. When we think of a claim, arguable or debatable. Sometimes I say debatable. Or I wouldn't consider it questionable. I'll explain why in a minute. Think of it as arguable or debatable. When I talk to a lot of students, they have a hard time first understanding this concept. Think of a debate, right? There are two positions. You take a position. So when you claim something, you're saying, this is the way it is, and you know that there's a counterclaim. There's somebody else that's going to say, no, that's not true. For example, you might say, the use of cell phones in the classroom helps students learn. It's a claim. It's arguable. Somebody else could say, no, cell phones are a distraction. They do not help, right? So think of a claim as arguable or debatable. You take a position on something. A claim is not question. A claim is not imperative or a command, right? We're not going to command people to do things, right? Use cell phones in the classroom. That's not a claim. That's a command. Okay. Let's go back here. Claim is arguable and debatable. The claim is specific. This goes back to our discussions about our problem statement. Be specific. When you start coming up with claims in your thesis statement, your topic sentences, most of the feedback that I give my students, I would say 75% of everything that comes out of my mouth, I can say is be more specific. Be more specific. How can you narrow it down? So that is also a claim. Claim is not so broad, it has to be very specific. What else? I forget, there's something else. A claim is arguable, it's debatable, it's specific. Well, supportable, is that a word? By evidence? I just made a word. It's supported, how about that? It is supported by evidence. The language is almost changing. I don't want to a claim needs to be supported by evidence. If you can't, and that goes to Carmen's point, right? You need to have some evidence. Now, for our purposes, for our workshop, for those who are more research inclined, has more interest in research, you might want to provide evidence by finding articles, right? Finding books. But evidence can also be anecdotal. So for our purposes, if you don't really want to go and look for articles, you just want this to be anecdotal, that just based on your own experience, that can also be informative evidence. Okay? So a claim here is the chore, the objective here is to have a thesis statement that is general, not too general, but general, the main idea of the paragraph, and the topic sentences, which are also claims, are more what? More specific. We don't want a topic sentence that's more general than our thesis statement, but we don't want a thesis statement that's so specific that we can't come up with good topic sentences. That's the challenge now, okay, is to convert that problem statement to these 4 sentences. Don't worry about paragraph development right now. Don't worry about the introduction or conclusion paragraph. These 4, we need to focus first on these 4 sentences, thinking first in terms of the thesis statement, and 3 topic sentences.
It's just a claim is arguable or debatable, specific, and it is, I would say, it is generally supported by evidence. Because if it is an opinion.
Okay, so here's my question. Is a claim an opinion?
Well, you have to base it on something. That's why you're claiming it. So you're saying, yes, this is what I think based on this.
We have to be, yes, Maricela, do you want to add it?
So it is not established fact. Because it is arguable. And when they are established facts like that, there's some sets, you can argue many more things. But it is that I was thinking that at the beginning when I started writing my papers, something that they always said, that is a claim. And I needed to, they always say, that's a claim in my literature review. when I have a lot of problems with that at the beginning. They say that's a claim, so you have to take it out.
It's part of your opinion, or it's part of what you think, or what you believe. It's not something based on, like, here's the evidence to prove it.
One of my claims is that UFOs exist.
UFOs exist.
So where's your evidence?
UFOs exist.
Yeah, I saw one
All right.
in Mexico City.
Okay. All right.
So it's not an opinion. It's a belief.
All right. So I have a question.
Because I saw
Okay, I have
the
a-
evidence.
I have a question. You tell me if this is a claim. Blue is a beautiful color.
That is an opinion.
Is that a claim?
Sorry, which one?
Blue, the color. Blue. Blue is a beautiful color.
That's a
No, but the question
But it's
is,
not
is it a
claim.
claim?
Well, is it arguable?
Yes.
Yes. Is it debatable? Yes. Is it specific and you support it by
But
evidence?
it is no evidence. Evidence?
can
What
you-
kind of evidence?
Can you, how would you support?
Do they have,
You can compare it to nature and you
or you can interview people asking what they
But they are opinions.
case for ESL.
What you just said, you don't have to base it on any article or anything else written. You can just do it by your own experience.
Okay. Typically, most would say that that's not a claim, that it's an opinion, because, you know, beauty is very subjective. Now, of course, you can talk about how beautiful it is, but it's not, the evidence part is what's lacking in general, is really to prove, right? Because we said it needs to be true. So blue's beautiful. How can you prove that it's beautiful? Now, if I say cell phones in the classroom should be used because it helps promote language acquisition, is that an opinion?
Yes.
In a way, it is an opinion, right? So,
But it can also be a claim.
but is it specific enough? Do you have evidence to support it? Think of it like the whole package deal, where it's for it to be a claim. And I would say, yes, it is an opinion. Yes, it is a claim because you have evidence. You can have evidence to support it. It's specific enough, and so on.
So we can say, for example, based on the context, you're just giving an opinion, say, okay, cell phones can be used in class, just like as an opinion.
In that case,
But if you're in a meeting, arguing classroom rules and so on, then that becomes.
well, what I'm saying is it's a claim already. I'm saying that when I say cell phones should be used in the classroom because it promotes language acquisition, I consider that a claim. And it's also an opinion. But my other example where the color is blue, I would argue that it's not a claim. It's just an opinion. Because we can't provide the evidence to support the idea of what is
As
beauty.
an opinion, it's not arguable. Or debatable.
Well, it's arguable, but remember, here's the point here that I want to make, is a claim needs to be all of these things. It's not like it needs to be just one of them. It needs to be arguable or debatable, and it also needs to be specific, and it also needs to be supported by evidence. If you're missing one of those three, then typically it's not a claim.
It's
That makes
claim.
sense?
It's,
Donna, did you have something to add there?
I would say the difference between the first one and the second one was the use of words. You said blue is a beautiful color. And I guess one of the problems that we sometimes face with students is that they add like the good. It is because it is good. It is because it is bad. It is because it is amazing. So when you use these empty adjectives in your claim, that becomes an opinion.
yeah, but it is not supported by evidence. Or is
Because
it?
that is subjective. If you say beautiful, what is beautiful for you is not
Yeah.
beautiful for me.
Exactly.
What is good for you is good for me. So that's why those are called empty adjectives, because you
And-
can say which is good and which is bad.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, those empty adjectives. It's like, maybe we talk to this, and usually when that happens, we try to direct the students to say, okay, well, what is good? Even like Hannah's example, beneficial. If you can narrow that down. Now, in other words, he's saying that it's good, right? In other words, they are saying that it's good, but without using the word good, being more specific. So the issue comes, it's actually related to this, trying to be a little bit more specific.
Because you're going to say, for example, cell phones are very useful.
Yeah, say cell phones are useful.
And that's it.
That's an opinion.
That's an opinion. They're very useful. But if you say cell phones are, well,
Promote.
Promote participation in class.
Or increase motivation.
Right. It's a claim, but it's also could be considered an opinion.
Yes, but no reality.
But it's our, exactly. So the point here that I'm trying to make is, it's all an opinion. It's not a matter of, is it an opinion or not an opinion? Instead of thinking it like that, think of it like, is it arguable and is it specific?
Another difference would be subjectiveness.
The subjectiveness, yeah. I mean, if it's more subjective, it's going to tend not to be a claim, like you said, yeah. You want it to be objectable to the degree that you can provide evidence. I mean, the objectivity comes.
Can we question what would be considered evidence?
Absolutely. Because now we're talking about the strength of the argument. It's still a claim whether you agree or not. But now we're talking about different things like, okay, is this a valid argument? Does the evidence support the claim or not? That's another issue that we're not talking about at this point right now, but certainly we'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's. So are we Councilman?
I want to cry.
Don't cry. Ask questions. If we can talk about it. We have time. Ask questions. Ask.
Well, my question is, or what causes a little bit of doubt is, to what degree can you tell someone, okay, this is not a valid claim, you can't research this because it's just an opinion. Talking about the color blue and then it's beautiful, and then talking about something about cell phones in the classroom. I mean, there's two sides. People say no, we don't use them because they don't work or they disrupt, and other people say no, use them because they're a very handy tool and blah blah blah. I mean, the evidence that you provide wouldn't it fall under the same line as the color?
I mean, honestly, think of like think of an argument behind blue is a beautiful color. I mean, how would you even, what type of evidence? I mean, what would you?
I can say, for example, in relation to what teacher Armando mentioned, it depends on the context. Maybe if you have like, blue is a beautiful color and you understand philosophy, that would be a very valid claim. Because in philosophy, you would like,
But having
aesthetics.
No. I would say blue, for example, blue means sadness.
Okay.
That is,
okay,
that would be a claim.
right. You
I
can
was
say,
going to say peace.
Or
yeah.
Yes, that
Yeah.
like in that way,
Imagine this.
but not a beautiful color.
Students, language learning students in a room with blue walls outperform students in rooms with red walls. Is that a claim?
In that way.
Yeah. So I'm not saying we can never use colors, for example.
No, that is why the restaurants in some time they were orange because it was believed that in that way you feel like I wanted to eat more.
Right, you can, and that would be evidence. You can logically think of certain evidence that would support that. So it's how it's presented, and going to your question, well, how do we know if it's, part of it also is what level of how specific is it? Because sometimes when we have something that's not so, it's too general, we have to ask, well, how would you support that? There's so many things you could talk about that, well, no. Then we have the level of the problem is being specific. So again, for me, what helps me is to distinguish if it's a good claim is it arguable? That's typically fairly easy. But then being specific enough, and then also envisioning some evidence that goes behind it. A lot of times I see like students, they'll write definitions, thinking that that is like a definition, and without, a definition could be a claim. But most of the time when students use it, they're not using it as a claim, it's just supporting evidence, actually. It's a supporting sentence. So, that's kind of what it is. Claims. Any other comments, questions, doubts? Does that make sense? All right. I wanted before I know I'm jumping around here. Yes.
Sorry. So we check what a claim is
because we are going to now create 4 claims. First claim is going to be the thesis statement. The other 3 claims are going to be topic sentences. The thesis statement and the topic sentences are claims. The claims need to be presented in a certain order, right? It's like you're now building kind of an argument. You're building a discussion. You're thinking, how am I going to organize these ideas to support the thesis statement? So the thing to think about with claims is we do want to be specific enough, but we also realize that we have a thesis statement that is a certain type of claim, and we have a topic sentence that is a certain type of claim. And there's a relationship between those. And I think the easiest way is to look at examples. Once we start talking and you have your thesis statement, we can look at specific examples of possible topic sentences that would align to this thesis statement. These 4 sentences are, if you get these right, then the rest of it kind of falls into place. When I work with students, this is stuff we talk about these 4 sentences, they come up with the 4 sentences, they start to write, and we go back to these 4 sentences and tweak and change. Because they hardly ever are created from the very beginning the way they end up at the end of the essay. Which is normal, which is part of the process. So, in the writing process, now is a good time also to consider a brainstorming activity. You can list out keywords that relate to this statement. Do like a word association. Just write down a list of words, whatever comes to mind, that link to the statement, specifically, then the second section, your hypothesis or your research questions, I should say. When you do your word association, your brainstorming, or even a mind map, you write out a mind map, some sort of visual, that helps.
You want us to do that right now?
If you'd like to. Or if you have questions. Yeah, and the idea is to start writing your thesis statement and your topic sentences. Yes, and sorry. If you have the statement, if you want to discuss your statement, again, that's fine too. There.
Hi, this is a tuyo. Sorry.
Okay. Are you sure you're talking to me or? This is just my example. I'm just giving you examples.
So, formative assessment given through the class can facilitate L2 speakers.
Formative assessment throughout the class can facilitate speaking, maybe help to speak, or let's see, facilitate. Formative assessment given throughout the class facilitates speakers of, or helps facilitate speakers of L2 in working in pairs.
Do you mean like for them talking to themselves?
Talking, or
To each other?
talking to each other. Facilitate speakers of L2 in speaking to each other. Whatever.
Facilitate what?
Well, I was just asking.
Yeah.
Tell you to change it.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, formative assessment given throughout the class can facilitate, can help speakers of L2 to communicate with each other. How was it? Oops. Sorry. Throughout the class, and
Are you content?
now the thesis statement, there's different ways, of course, to writing a thesis statement. In this example here, I could be very specific and put by and provide the ways in which formative assessment could facilitate L2 speakers. And I can list them out, 1, 2, and 3. And those 1, 2, and 3 concepts could be reflected in each of the topic sentences. Now, it doesn't have to be that specific, but certainly it's
And
one.
you just use the points that you were going to do for your topic sentence.
Right. All right, so this would be the first point, second point, and third point. So whatever I mention here, I could specifically repeat that here in each of the topic sentences. And a lot of times this is what I ask our students to do, just so they get used to really linking those. But of course, you don't have to be that specific. It could be a general concept that you make more specific in the topic sentences. Okay, I think we'll stop there. What I'd like to do tomorrow is continue working on these 4 sentences. Again, looking at our problem statement here. I've included here kind of an example. Maybe it's not the best example. But I have my thesis statement, and I've specifically mentioned 3 concepts in the thesis statement that I'm going to repeat in each of the topic sentences. Remember that the topic sentences will be the first sentence of each body paragraph that will complete the essay. And so this is just an example. We'll continue working on this tomorrow. If you haven't already, please join the wiki. I'm going to send an email to each one of you that will allow you to access a Word Online document that you can work on throughout. And I was thinking, and probably having us work in either teams or small groups, developing an essay, so we don't have to all develop like a whole essay that you can work together, developing one essay. But I want to give everyone access to their own Word document, and then you can decide how you want to work as far as, you know, if you all want to work in one of your online documents. You don't have to work online. I mean, I see most of you have your computers, but certainly you can write it out. You don't have to work online if you don't want to. Any questions about our developing some sort of issue, thinking about an issue that we want to work on, looking at this problem statement based on that problem, and thinking of claims in terms of thesis statement, topic sentence?
No, that was clear.
Is it kind of making sense? We're still in the brainstorming process part of this, so even if you have your statements, these 4 key sentences, they could very well change as you go and get into it, develop it. But the process right now is just to try to come up with something that makes sense, that's aligned, that's coherent. Tomorrow we'll talk more specifically about coherency, because basically that's all we're talking about now is how do we write these 4 sentences in a coherent fashion? What does it mean to write coherently and all of that? We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Okay. Any final questions, doubts, issues? If you haven't already, please leave me your expectations for the workshop. You can either write it on a piece of paper and give it to me now, or you can send an email to me. But it's very important that I hear from you getting started. What expectations do you have? And I would also, for those of you who came in a little bit late, maybe you can see this. If you go to the goal setting activity, I listed 3 different general areas that we'll be talking about throughout the workshop. Obviously, the leading question, the issues that you face, but also pedagogy and writing mechanics. So it's important that you let me know which of these 3 or something else that you really want to focus on in this workshop so that I can be conscious of that as we go through it. Okay. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.